All right, thank you, David. And it's really great that so many people from so many different clubs and sporting bodies and organisations and associations are in Gippsland that you wanted to be a part of this. Hopefully, it's a very worthwhile session for you. We've assembled, I think, some people from a range of traditional through to digital, online, different kinds of media. So hopefully, between us all, will be very helpful to you and your clubs and your organisations. And you'll probably hear, in fact, many points, maybe more than once, because between the four of us, I think we'll maybe overlap a little bit in some of what we say, but I think that'll just help to reinforce probably what are some key points if a number of us touch on those things. And so taking part, we really want to welcome Stephen and Brad, who are joining us from the Collingwood Football Club. This presentation, of course, involves Gippsport, involves Collingwood and the Latrobe Valley Authority as well. And Damon is here from Gippsport as well. And a lot of you who are local, of course, will know Damon. He's been around the area a long time in different roles, including with the Latrobe Valley Express and some other things. So, in fact, I'll just briefly introduce everybody. Stephen Reilly is with us from Collingwood Football Club, talking about digital audiences, perhaps a focus on increasing reach and engagement with all ages, but particularly I think what's really important is keeping engaged with young people, because we need to obviously keep feeding young people into our competitions and so on, and we need to have them on our sports pitches and so on, but we also need to keep them engaged off the sports pitch as well. So we'll probably look at some of those things. Stephen spent more than 20 years in newspapers with The Age and The Australian, and before joining Collingwood as the GM of Media and PR back in 2012. So it's good to have his knowledge and expertise. At Collingwood, his role includes overseeing all external communications, the fostering and management of relationships with media, and of course there's, I would imagine, a lot of that for a AFL club dealing with a lot of media and providing expertise in issues management and so on too. So great to have Stephen here. Brad Schultz is also here. Most of Brad's career has been in the sports and entertainment industry, both here and in the UK. For leading sports rights holders and governing bodies for brands like the English Premier League, ATP, WRC, Eurosport, Turner Broadcasting, Tennis Australia, Cricket Australia, AFL, Fox Sports. So, yeah, he's been there and done that all over the place. So, Brad, fantastic to have you involved. Brad loves providing innovative growth strategies that enable brands to add long-term value, overcome the challenges presented by the digital environment, and drive new revenue, which of course is important for clubs and associations. So, and Brad's been with Collingwood since November last year, so that's about 12 months now, I guess, as General Manager of Marketing and Product. So good to have Brad's expertise. Damon, as I said, he's for 10 years. He has industry experience across regional media and community sports marketing, including stints at the Express, the Shepherd News, and of course, fairly recently at AFL Gippsland. And Damon has a particular interest in the social impact and responsibility of grassroots sport, and is currently leading Gippsport's Increasing Access to Sport project, which aims to identify and address barriers to youth sports participation in the Valley. Ryan Evans is on the side. He's with Gippsport, but also president of the Boysdale Bragg Footy Netball Club. So we might involve him along the way a little bit as well from a club point of view. And about myself, I've been in the media game for about 44 years now in broadcast media, mainly radio, as both a presenter and a journalist, which is my current role now at TRFM in Gippsland's Gold. I do a lot of writing and a bit of online publishing. I'm part-time at the radio, and so that frees me up to do quite a few other sort of writing jobs and so on. So hopefully between us all, we'll be able to be really helpful to you. And there will be an opportunity later for you to ask questions as well. So we invite you to maybe keep those in the back of your mind if you have any, or maybe make a note of them, and or even put them up in the comments, which I think Dave showed you how to do. And then I think Ryan later on will look through those and we'll throw some questions at the panel, see if between us we can sort out some of those for you. So we'll do that in an organised way towards the end of the presentation. So we'll take it in turns to speak, and I'll start. And I'm coming at this in my presentation from both sides of the fence in a way, because one, as a broadcaster of local news and sport with TRFM and Gippsland's Gold, but also as someone who sends out media releases as well, from my sole trader business Voyage Media, and I engage with other local media through that activity. So I'm sending out and I'm trying to get coverage for things that I'm writing about or on behalf of others. And but of course, I'm also at the receiving end, and I'm putting out information through the radio. So I'll come at this from a couple of angles. Probably the important part of what I'm going to say here is understanding about the local electronic media. Now, Damon, of course, we'll get to him and maybe more of the newspaper side of things and the press and so on. We might overlap on some things here too, but so I'll focus more on the TV and the radio, which really does have limited space to fill when it comes to airtime, and of course when it comes to papers with the column space available. So sometimes there's too much information, other times there's not enough. So if there's a lot going on locally, well, just not all of it will get mentioned. But if there's not so much news or sport. So understanding local electronic media, so I'll talk a bit about the radio and the TV. We only have limited sort of time space to fill. Like in the local news that we do on the radio, there's a local news bulletin of 2 minutes and 15 seconds, and that has to include a sports story. But as you can imagine, in that short space of time, that leaves very little time for sport when you're talking about all the police stuff and everything else that's going on. So we'll come to that, but just a quick overview. In radio in Gippsland, of course, as well as the two stations that I'm at, they're owned by the ACE network. Of course, there's ABC Gippsland. There's what is now called Triple M, which broadcasts out of Warragul. That's owned by Southern Cross Austereo. There's 3GG, that's owned by Capital Radio. And we have a range of community stations which are based at Inverloch and Druin and Morwell and Bairnsdale and Sale, a Christian station that's licensed for sale or based at Sale. And, of course, various other ABC national stations. So some of those have perhaps a stronger local focus than others do. Regarding our stations, TRFM and Gippsland's Gold. Gippsland Gold, you might also know as Gold 1242, but of course with the addition now of a couple of FM transmitters, we're covering more places through a mix of AM and FM. So we do some interviews on our programs, and probably from a sports point of view, there's our local winter sports show, Balls and All. But other than that, for local sports clubs, we do have a service called Community Connect, and that's on the websites of both stations and on the air, and that's ideal for sporting and community clubs like yours to publicise your special events, and it's easy to enter details for that. Just go to the website for either TRFM or Gippsland's Gold, just look for the tab that says out an event, and just put in the information about what activity your club is doing that you'd like publicity for, and we can make that happen. But otherwise, the other thing is the local news, and which, as I say, the sports stories are contained within the local news bulletins, but of course they're only 2 minutes and 15 seconds in length. We have 7 of those through the breakfast time hours every half hour, and I generally rotate 2 or 3 sports stories through the 7 bulletins each half hour. We have to be, there's probably, I'd call it 1.2 journos we have there. I'm only part-time. We have another journo, Danny, but also who has other duties. So that adds up to probably about 1.2 journos. So with basically one journo in the place, we have to do things as quickly and efficiently as we can to cover enough stories, to get enough stories done during the day, prepared to broadcast and so on. So what's really helpful to us sometimes, and like we're doing at the moment with reporting on the weekend's cricket, when we include that, when we include wraps of each round in our bulletins on a Monday morning, we actually have people from the associations do that, either a secretary or their appointed publicity person or so on, and they do a nice little 40-second wrap. So it doesn't tell the whole story. It's really just the highlights in 40 seconds of what happened in their league or association over that weekend. That's how we do the cricket on a Monday, and then at other days during the week we just come up with our own stories from the different clubs. But a lot of that comes from information that clubs proactively send to us. Because there is only just over one journalist there, we can't chase everything, and so it's a real help for us if clubs are proactive in actually sending information our way, whether that be results of the weekend or just bits of news about the club, so coaching appointments or other things that are going on around the club. People who, or the clubs who do appoint a person for this role, if they're proactive in sending information out to local media like ours, then the better chance they have of being included. Now, as I said before, that depends on how much is around, whether it does get included or not. If it's a very busy period for sports information, if there's a lot going on, that'll reduce your chance. But not to be disheartened by that if you don't get on. It just means that there's more happening than we've got time with those limitations that I spoke about, that we've got. So it doesn't mean you give up. It just means that it's a time issue. But so I'll come back to that bit about maybe leagues and associations or clubs appointing media people, because that's something that you might like to consider on your situation, and possibly something that I can help you with. But I mentioned just some of the other local stations there. They do varying types of local news services and other things, and ABC Gippsland, of course, they do 4 hours of local broadcasting a day from 6:30 till 8 in the morning, and then 8:30 to 11 o'clock all comes out of their sales studio, and pretty much all of that time is local news and interviews and information and so on from their team. They're actually a talk station, so they're set up to do all that stuff. TR and Gippsland Gold are more music and entertainment stations, so we have a different focus. And so again, because they spend 4 hours a day talking about local things at ABC Gippsland, they're hungry for information, and again, that provides a good opportunity for local sporting clubs and groups and so on. As for the TV news, well, Prime 7 has at different times a 30-second local news capsule. Win, of course, has the half-hourly nighttime bulletin at 6 o'clock, and they've got some locally based journos in Traralgon who can move out around the area, and they cover both general news and sports stories. 9 has recently introduced a half-hour statewide local bulletin that goes on at 5:30 before they have Peter Hitchener from Melbourne at 6 o'clock. Now, that's statewide, but Gippsland does get a fairly good go on there. They've got a couple of journos based in Traralgon, so Gippsland News and Sport does pretty well on that. Maybe not as much as Win. Win is more Gippsland focused, whereas 9 is more statewide. But as I say, Gippsland does okay. I see Gippsland on a few different stories each night. So recapping perhaps what we need for TRFM and for Gold, what's probably not terribly useful to us is if I get an email that's got pages and pages of information, I don't have time to read through lengthy reports like that. What is really helpful is to get some clear dot points, clear key points about what you want to get across or what the scores are. We obviously can't tell the whole story, just the highlights. So to get that kind of information is probably the most useful to us. Now, as I said, just quickly, because we'll move on to the other guys. So just quickly, the other side of what I do under my sole trader business that I've been doing for many years, long before I was in the radio here, Voyage Media, I send out releases sometimes looking for coverage from these kind of outlets and online and all the different things that are available to us now. An example is, I don't know if you can see behind me, but the motorcyclist there, Ben Curry, I send out releases about him. He's a local Glengarry guy who's competing in a big motorcycling competition, road racing competition in the UK, and has been having some success at that. And so, as an example of what I do, is I send information about him out to the local media, which has been picked up, and about all sorts of other things. So, and what I do when I do that is that I will write up a properly worded release, one that's not too long, but one that can be easily read in a short amount of time by a busy journalist. But I also include in that I'll highlight a few dot points, a few key points for quick consumption by the busy journo. If I include a follow-up contact number for journos to call, but most importantly, I also send out a good quality, high-res photo, one or more photos, because to get picked up not just by the papers, but even like for the radio at TR and that where I am, we also put stories up on our websites. But we always need photos to go with those, and ones that are clear of any copyright problems. Like we can't put up a photo, for instance, that the sporting club might have got from the local paper or something like that, because that photo belongs to the paper. But again, they're things I can help you with. If you'd like to reach out to me through my Voyage Media, there is a website. You can see examples of my work at voyagemediaaustralia.com, and so you can take a look at that to see examples of the work I've done and maybe how to reach me if I can help you in some way. So I'll leave that there for my side of things so that we've got time to hear from some of the others here now. And if I just change over my pieces of paper here, let's bring on Stephen. Yep. Thank you for joining us, Stephen.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
It's great, and look, you bring a lot of experience to this discussion here tonight. 20 years experience across a range of different things with papers and so on. So just to maybe first of all, let's start by talking about the audience and the importance of maybe the clubs and the associations knowing who they want to reach. So would you like to use that as a jumping off point for maybe some comments you'd like to make?
Sure. Look, it's a basic mistake that a lot of sports organisations or businesses generally who are looking for coverage of in some form or want to garner some attention, they don't know who they're talking to. They think that if they sort of this shotgun approach to blasting out information, that it's people are going to be vitally interested in it. Most of them aren't. They're going to throw it in the bin. So it's very important you know who you're talking to. And I suppose there's a couple of parts to that. There is the medium by which you get information out, but that's simply the way of the conduit to get the information out. The information itself, the content, is probably where I want to focus. What is a story is a fundamental question that when you're dealing with the media, that's what they work in. That their currency is stories. So you were right, Greg, to say that if someone bowls up with 3 pages of stats and scores from the games, that's almost guaranteed to be thrown out. So I would urge anyone who's in a position where they're trying to either cultivate a relationship with someone in the media so that they can help their organisation or develop media skills of their own, start thinking about what is the story in all of that massive information. What is the story? And that can be, most of the time, it's going to be something very human. It's not going to be statistical. It's not going to be a fact drenched sort of piece of information. It's going to be something human. So, for instance, if it's a local cricket side, it might be that the son of a former great. So that's a heritage story, or it's a comeback of someone's overcome a grave illness to return to the first 11 and brought great joy to the local community by doing that. Or I can go way back to where I did begin, which was in Alice Springs, working for the local paper up there. And the highlight of the week, certainly the sporting week up there, was Sunday afternoons, double headers at Traeger Park, which is their local football ground. 4 teams came in. There were 5 teams in the competition, and you had a bye each week. But the point of my story is that people came together. There were 4 games, and I could easily have covered in the day, so-and-so beat so-and-so, someone kicked 4 goals to 5 goals, whatever it was. But I tried my hardest with some success to bring to people's attention the fact that it might have been a very young Gilbert McAdam who'd got homesick, left Claremont where he was going to be he was a budding start. He'd abruptly returned home. That was the story of the week. Forget the results. Really, it was about this young local kid destined to play AFL footy. At that stage, he was 17. He comes back. The story was him. It was not about, the president speaking glowingly about Gilbert or about the prospects for the team now that he was back. It was about Gilbert's story. Homesickness, the fact he'd come back to play with his brother, and that had people, and not just sports lovers, but people for the front of the paper and local television interested. So I would, and that's a very small example, but I would urge you to always keep that in mind. And Greg, you would probably know better than I do now, but over the last 20 years with the rise of digital media and therefore the erosion of traditional media, what was traditional mainstream media, newsrooms around the country are depleted. They have fewer and fewer staff. So we're asking them to provide us with information that they just don't have the time to do. They don't have the time to explore and discover and tell the stories themselves, often as well as they would like to. So recognising that, if you can bowl up a story, and there's not always one available. Granted, you're not always going to have some sexy yarn that's going to make people salivate and have the cameras out, they're following you up the next day. But always keep in mind, what is the human element in this? What is the thing that's going to make people fascinated about this story? And with that, you being able to tell it, or at least convey it to someone, a fellow storyteller, i.e. a journo, in a very concise fashion. So it hits him in the face or her in the face and says, this screams yarn. Have you heard about this? So-and-so's, he had his leg broken in 3 places only 6 weeks ago, and he ran a miracle single on the weekend to get him home in the last, that is the story. So you try to present, that would be the angle on a yarn I would write, with the results and all the rest of the club information tucked away underneath that. So understand, most journos, most newsrooms are time poor, resource poor. And Greg, you've already told us that you just simply can't wade through enormous amounts of information. It's got to be told to you in a concise fashion. So keep that in mind. Equally, cultivate relationships because where you can, and in your local communities, that's probably easier in some ways than it is for in a city where much bigger, sprawling, so many different competitions. But cultivate relationships because in the media, because if you can gain the trust of media professionals, and that might be a journo from the local television station or a print guy or a radio, someone, and you develop a relationship and you ring them and say, look, I've got a yarn here, they're inclined to think that it is a yarn because they've got a background with you. You're not ringing up cold going, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I've got this great story about so-and-so, and they, yeah. And if they take your call because you've got this relationship with them and they've come to trust you, it will work in your favour. And equally, not that I hope this doesn't happen too often in your part of the world, but when things aren't going all that well and the media are chasing you for all the wrong reasons, you get a softer landing if you've got a relationship with someone who can trust what you talk to them about. They ask you and they go, look, what's the background on this? And you can inform them and they trust you with it. It's going to help protect your organisation, the people in question. So I also think on the whole, you're going to be selling information to the media, selling the interests of your organisation. I'm in a slightly different position where I am at Collingwood, as we are, most of us in the AFL in my role. We've got people coming to us incessantly. I'm not going out to them, to the media, trying to garner attention for Collingwood. So I understand I'm in a very different position to a lot of the people I'm talking to. But you do want to know what a story is, to be proactive about it, to be telling that story, to understand that's the hook that's going to have people interested. And that's fascinating. And gee, this is a real colourful story about this guy. But equally, if you understand what a story is, you also know what the bad ones are. So if you have a bit of an issue on your hands, the media are going to be all over this. So if that sense of, and it takes time to hone it. Don't be disappointed if you overlook the odd yarn. I deal with a lot of athletes. We've got at Collingwood, we've got AFL and VFL footballers, AFLW athletes, and netballers, and very few of them, even the most experienced of them, get a yarn. They'll be talking to you about. And I have a memory, I suppose it's an example I've used in the past. Young Ben Sinclair, he played about 100 games with us from about 2010 to 2015 to 16. And I'm talking to him casually, and he says to me, I've been really enjoying busking. I've been down at the local train station, and this is an AFL footballer, mind you. He'd probably played about 30 games at the time. And my ear straight away, I said, what? Well, yeah, I'm down, I sort of busk, and this is a guy who's earning six figures, right? And he wasn't doing it to earn money. He was doing it because he loved playing the guitar, and there was a performance element to him. But that's a yarn. That's a story straight away. But he had no idea. He said, "Oh, what would people be interested in that?" And I said, "Think about that. Think about how Channel 7 or Channel 9 or The Age or the Herald Sun or a radio is going to go. So we can get vision or a picture of an AFL footballer sitting at a local train station playing his guitar with a cap on and his guitar case open with a few coins in it." So that's a story every day of the week, and a good news story. And what does it say? It says that Ben, I tried to explain it to him because he couldn't understand why it was a story. And I'm saying to him, don't you understand? It says that footballers aren't just robots. They often get accused of being these, say nothing, do nothing creatures who lack personality. Here's an example of someone whose world's bigger than just football, but equally you've got interests, and here you are in a very local, human way, providing a bit of whether it was good or bad guitar playing for the local train patrons. I said it's a charming, warm story, and so he had no idea that anyone would be interested in that sort of content. So it wasn't about kicks, marks, and handballs. It wasn't about how we played on the weekend. It was about an AFL footballer doing something unusual for a professional athlete.
Yeah, that's you've given some great examples there, Stephen. Relationships. I'll just pick up on a couple of things you just said there, and one is about having good relationships with your local media, and you guys, of course, would have that with the TV reporters, the paper reporters, and so on who handle AFL football. That's really important, and I value those relationships at a local level too, between us and people from different clubs and associations and leagues and so on. And you're right. If we have a personal connection with the association or club in that way, and a particular person who we liaise with, then yeah, we're going to have and I don't want it to sound like we're going to give them a softer run, but we are going to be a little more sympathetic simply because we probably know more of the background, we know the club situation, we know what's going on there, and can approach something in a more balanced way rather than just in a sensationalist way. But the other really important thing sort of with that, talking about Ben the Busker and so on, is stories about people are ones that always work best. And if you can come to a journo, our local newsroom or newsroom that's stations or whatever and say, oh, I got this great yarn about this player or whatever who's out there doing this or that or achieving this or whatever. People's stories make the best thing. The other thing that I do that I didn't mention, with a friend, we've got another project called Gippsland Goodness, and that's all about on a website telling good news stories, mainly about people, about things that people are doing, because the public laps that stuff up. They want to know those stories. They're engaged with those kind of stories. And if you look at the sports stories on like I was watching the Win News tonight and the 9 local news tonight, and even all their sports stories are about individuals who are working to achieve this or this thing's happening. It's all about people. So, Stephen, you're totally right that those people's stories are the best, and the same in the papers and all that too. Wanted to add?
Well, I think there is a pattern of coverage which you can take advantage of, and it's if you've got a strong connection, let's say it's with a print journo. If the story gets and they trust you, you end up getting a better run. But equally, if it's a really good yarn, it'll be picked up by others, and therefore you'll do the work to get it placed once. It's highly likely, if it's good enough, the Teeves will be covering it the next day. Following it up, there may even be that morning, the guys in the radio room, the newsroom, are doing a write-off of it and sending someone out, if they can, to get their own grab or a slice of audio to follow it up. And it can work in reverse. It doesn't have to work print TV radio or print radio TV. But if you get a run somewhere, it'll start doing work for you anyway. So it's probably trying to spread yourself everywhere, while a basic service, I agree, is necessary. But think about people you can talk to regularly, closely, trust, have a yarn for them, and you'll find that the media will follow itself. So now that's true if you were to use, and Brad Schultz, my colleague from Collingwood, may talk about this a bit further. But if you've got an audio clip, it's something shot off your phone, or it's that you can provide, or that radio could use good quality audio that is they can use, and having written off the story, they've got something else to add which paper can't use, or it's a post, an Instagram post or something that can be shared digitally, that you can add to the actual content, what the story is, and then you offer a clip of some description. Then you're making that single story, you're allowing it to be told in a whole lot of mediums. It's not strictly print or strictly television, although it might be, and you're sort of hoping that it's all of those things. So where you can add value to the story, think about that. If you bowl up a really great yarn about someone, an athlete, a young girl gets to represent Victorian soccer, but and her mum was a former Australian player in her own right. So there's a heritage to that. It's a mother-daughter story. It's about high excellence, high achievement. But there's that, but then you get a clip from the daughter saying, "I've always idolised my mum. She's been my inspiration, or she's been the one, my model." That gets a run every day. So so it's the story exists in its own right, but you've added something to it that could be shared digitally, but equally it'll be used by television if it's shot, not just audio, but it's visual as well. They can use that. So think about how you can amplify the story with using digital, using social media.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll use that as a springing off point to go to Brad then, because I think you can follow on nicely from that, because getting yourself into the paper, the local TV and radio, that I think can be part of a broader marketing strategy for a club or a league or association to increase knowledge of their existence and what they do out there in the public. And So, there's a marketing aspect to all this, isn't there, Brad?
Yeah, and look, and Stephen makes a fantastic point there. The content has so many different stages of it, and you can break it up and create different segments that have different shelf life on different platforms. So on social, for example, little snippets of the story and breaking it up into different sections really has a long life and can go a long way. And I think the iPhone is so powerful. A lot of the content that we're capturing with players in and around the Olympic Park, where players are training behind the scenes, a lot of that content comes just from the iPhone. And during lockdown, we were even filming Zoom calls and putting them up onto broadcasts. So the quality of the technology that's out there now and the photo quality from an iPhone is not far off the quality from a really good camera that you can spend a lot of money on. So don't be afraid to get out your iPhone and use that. My role at Collingwood, just to give you a bit more context, it's all about really engaging and exciting fans by bringing them closer to the club in more ways than ever before. So I really focus on user experience design, product design, and customer journey mapping. And to Stephen's point around relationships and understanding people and understand that human behaviour side of things, it's really important from a customer point of view as well. So making sure you really understand fans, understand your members, understand their pain points, and have a relationship with them. It's similar to the way it works in the media. You really need to have a relationship with your fans, almost a one-to-one relationship. And there's some great new technology that's enabling that with CRM and cross-platform notifications that I could go into in more detail if needed. But those sorts of relationships really allow. Sorry, that's my 5-year-old coming in. Those sorts of relationships really allow you to take things to the next level when it comes to creating new marketing experiences. And the world of marketing has changed so much. It's very contextual, it's very dynamic, and it's highly personalized. So that the type of content that you want to create is almost different for every customer. But if you can share it with those customers in a way that is personalized, it's fantastic. So for our team, innovation is all about solving a customer pain point or a need in a way that helps both the customer and the business at the same time. So one of the key questions to ask yourself that we're always challenging ourselves within the team is really, what is the customer problem and opportunity we're trying to solve? What does the fan need? What does the member want? So what challenges do your fans wrestle with each day? What could be improved? How do you describe the situation they're in? And what's the most important benefit for them? And so we create a lot of content experiences off the back of that. And we identify ways to bring new solutions to life from a product and marketing point of view. So some of the examples are like, next year, we identified that our members and fans weren't always attending games, and particularly in reserve seat games. So we wanted to offer them a new experience. So we're introducing some new innovative services that are directed at reserve seat holders for next season. And what we're going to do is allow members to relinquish their reserve seat if they can't attend a particular match. And then we're going to provide them with a discount of the sum of... This is going well, isn't it? I've just got to let my dog out. 1 second, sorry.
Yep, no worries at all. So, and
my dog interrupted me during that moment, so apologies for that.
No.
So I was talking a little bit about content there, and then talking about marketing and product experiences. So from a content point of view, it does go very hand in hand, and you need to think about the way in which you think about partnerships and media partnerships. You need to think about customers in the same way, essentially, so your fans and members in the same way. And the way to do that is to really get to know them, have conversations. You don't have conversations with every one of them, but if you can find groups that fit within certain segments that you're trying to target, listen to them and learn from them, and then you can start to create content experiences for them and then start to share that with a wider group. I think that's really, really important to do.
Alrighty, I'll just unmute myself. Thank you, Brad, for that. So that's a different angle that we can take, that clubs and associations can take. And It's maybe a newer area for some of the more traditional sort of sports and so on to think about. If any of them wanted to explore that further, are there ways they can do that? Those kind of ideas that you've just been talking about with marketing and using different strategies and using different mediums and so on?
Yeah, look, I mean, in terms of strategies for different platforms, yeah, look, I can certainly go through and talk a bit about social in a bit more detail. But when it comes to creating experiences for fans and members, it's really simple, and it's I can certainly share some concepts in and around that. But it's really about setting yourself up with a framework of questions that you want to ask, and making sure you properly listen to the challenges that your fans and members have, and then trying to work through and thinking big, really challenging yourself to think big. How can we do something different here for this fan, for this member? What can we do that is really going to excite them and engage them, that they're going to recommend? So it's all about recommendations. What would you give a 9 or a 10 out of? When you rate something that highly, you're more likely to tell your friends and family. So we're always trying to focus on recommendations, and recommendations are really driven off the back of increasing the number of interactions your fans have with yourself, with your club, with your players, with your athletes. The more interactions you can increase, the more chance you've got of increasing those recommendations or learning about what is going to drive someone to rate an experience a 9 or a 10 out of 10. And as you start to build on that, you'll quickly identify, okay, this is not working. We need to change. We need to pivot to this. So it's about being really agile in your way of working. So learning on the fly and not being afraid to experiment and try new things. So it's a good mindset to have, thinking about experimentation, and doing an experiment is often free. It doesn't cost you money to ask a member or a fan a question and to try and bring something to life really quickly. You can try something. One approach I really like is the Wizard of Oz approach. You remember in the Wizard of Oz movie, there's all the strings are being held by this one person, all these shows happening out in the front. Often that's how it's within Collingwood when we're trying to bring something to life for the first time. It's all these things happening. We make it look like there's a lot going on at the front. That's an experiment. And then when the experiment starts to go well, the new idea for the fan, the new experience for the member, when those things start to go well and we're seeing positive signs from it, we double down on it, and then we start to invest in it, start to build on it. And that's how we go about bringing something new to life for our fans and for our members.
All right, that's very good. So just a reminder to all the guests who are listening and watching along that there will be an opportunity for some questions. So you can pop those into the comments section, into the conversation section, and Ryan's keeping an eye on that. There will be an opportunity. Ryan will present those questions to us. There we go. Yeah. There's a graphic that shows that, and so we will have a question and answer. You can throw some questions at Brad or Stephen or Damon, who I'll bring on now. As I said, Damon's been in this area quite a while, in media and so on, as well as other places. And so Damon, welcome to you as well. Thank you for being part of our presentation this evening.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here.
And you've got a few other points. I spoke a bit about local radio and TV. I kept away from the papers and some of the things that you might like to touch on. So yeah, what thoughts can you bring to the discussion this evening?
Thanks, Greg. I guess for me, I'd like to sort of build on some of the things that have been discussed so far, and take it back a step. And I think Stephen gave some really good advice about the human element of stories. It's really important. And I think what we've got to think about is not only are those stories maybe more likely to get a run, but what do they also say about your club? And I think that's really important. So to go back a step, it's important to understand what you want to achieve through media and marketing for your club. So is it about growing your membership, increasing the attendance at games? Is it growing the audience for your social pages? Might help achieve those other goals. Maybe it's about informing your existing audience or membership base about goings on at the club and that sort of thing. But people is at the heart of all of that, as we've sort of touched on a few times. It's been a theme through tonight, which has been really good. But I think the more human stories you're telling, it's about what does the content say about your club, the content that you're sharing with traditional media or through social media from your club's pages. What does it say about your club and its values and its culture? And I think that's really important. Grassroots sport is ultimately about participation. So yes, there are pathways programs, and we like celebrating the achievements in the elite, but it's important to reframe or redefine what success is for your members. So it may not be necessarily being the leading goal kicker, but it might be kicking your first goal. And that's something really worth celebrating for that particular individual. As Stephen touched on, there might be a heritage element to a story, which is great. It might be a comeback, so it might be overcoming illness or injury or something like that. And people like to share in those stories and understand their people and have them humanised. But again, if you're looking to attract participants to your club or members to your club, you want to show that you care about your people, care about all of your people. So make sure that those stories aren't really similar, it accurately reflects, I suppose, the broad participation base that you probably have. So we know that the vast majority of your participants are probably not elite. So don't put all your emphasis on the few that are, even if the reach is a bit wider for that content. So let's say Sale Footy Club celebrates Scott Pendlebury being a champion of their club. He's come through the club, he's great success, he's played AFL at an elite level, he's been a superstar of that competition. Absolutely, Sale should claim a part in his story and use that to celebrate what that club can achieve, I suppose, and what can be achieved through the club. But at the same time, it should definitely be celebrating its current members. And someone playing 200 games for the Sale Footy Netball Club should be just as exciting and something that their people in their community can look up to as much as Scott Pendlebury, because the reality is that's more achievable for the vast majority of people than Scott Pendlebury's incredible exploits. So that's an example there. Also, and this is obviously youth is a big focus of my work at the moment, and I think it's a really important point that I would like to touch on now, and that's that senior players are not all that represent your club for the most part. So if we talk about a traditional footy netball club, most clubs are going to have seniors reserves, so open age, as well as A grade, B grade, C grade, probably netball. But they're also going to have under 17s netball and under 18s footy and under 16s footy and under potentially 15s and 13s netball. And all of those members are relevant to your audience. So even if you're not reaching the players or the peers of the players or the friends of the players, you might be reaching parents. And so if you're celebrating their achievements and their involvement, their participation at your club, you're saying to other parents of participants or other participants that that's something your club values. And so what's your club getting out of sharing these stories through traditional media or social media? It's growing that audience and it's showing that your club is a club that is something that they want to be a part of. And that's a really important thing. So again, it really matters knowing what you want to achieve by this work, because as Stephen said, if it's a haphazard approach, you're not going to achieve your goals. So that's probably something that I'd touch on. And the other element to that is not just sharing their stories, but giving them a voice. We know
for hosting this session. It was great to get you involved as well.
No worries, absolutely my pleasure. And all the best to all the sporting clubs and associations out there all across Gippsland. You're all doing a fantastic job. Thank you.